and I went on something else apparently. But I think I am on the correct street right now. But either way, hello. Or I should do this en español, ¿no? Sí. Bienvenidos a todos esos alumnos. Soy Profesora Chanelle. That's the end of the Spanish, okay? For those of you who freaked out entirely. But, I want you guys to be good with the Spanish. You have to know that you're going to speak Spanish for the exam and you need to get used to it because in the majority of the cases, and whether it's this French or Portuguese, it applies, it's the same because all three are Romance languages, all three are under the same exact syllabus, okay? So you do have to practice. And the reason I'm coming on here is because orals is next week, next month, all right, in a few weeks. And the fact is, most of us have not had, maybe had a lot of opportunity to practice because you don't do a foreign language to read it, I think, in most cases, right? So you tend to do a foreign language to speak it because languages are living only if they're spoken, all right? They're only living if they're spoken, okay? So that's what we're here to do. All right, so without further ado, if I stop there, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to monitor it on two different devices. But without further ado, what I'm going to do is cover how you can prepare for your orals exams next week. Next month. I'm so sorry, guys. Next month. I'm throwing you guys off. But for next month. And I want to give you very specific guidelines. Obviously, overall, you do have to practice the foreign language you're preparing for, whether it's Spanish, French, or Portuguese, because again, they're all Romance languages. They're very similar. So even though I don't teach French, at least not yet, and I don't speak Portuguese, unfortunately, I can still give you tactics that will work and help you prepare for the exam because they all fall under the same exact syllabus. So without further ado, letting you know this is sectioned. My advice is sectioned into four general categories. All right, it's going to be based on obviously helping you focus as you practice and prepare, and the aim is to help you improve your confidence. All right, learning a foreign language is a mental game. It's a mind game. Listen, it is a mind game of epic proportions. You have to do a serious battle with yourself because your things that you can already express in your own native tongue, you have a hard time saying it in this other language. Okay, so we're going to go through the practicalities here. First off, vocabulary. You obviously cannot sit down and learn the entire dictionary, right? That's not practical, that's not feasible, and would it actually make sense? It may not make sense. So what I normally recommend, and this is what I do with my own learners for Espanol, I actually look at vocabulary along the actual topics for the exam, all right? And this applies to even paper 2. It applies to the entire exam because why? The topics that are recommended for this level are all basic life topics. It's general life. I often call CSEC Spanish tourist Spanish. And the reason I call it tourist level Spanish is because you get enough information to just have basic conversations, basic everyday conversations. So if you're not familiar with the topics, they are home and family, school and career, daily routine, sports and recreation, shopping, and travel. All right, so home and family, school and career, daily routine, sports and recreation, shopping, and travel. And then now you're going to tell me, wait a minute, those are a lot to learn. I'll tell you a really good hack here. Home and family, school and career, daily routine, they're almost nearly the same thing. I have been working on building vocabulary for my learners in these categories, and they tend to overlap. Once you cover daily routine, you have to talk about what's happening at home what's happening at school, or you may talk about what's happening when you want to have fun, to do something recreational. So if you understand that home and family, school and career daily routine, they have an overlap, then it's really for sports and recreation, shopping, and travel. Think outside of the box too much of that. Think about things in your daily life that you may need vocabulary for, or you can Google a list. I mean, we have Google, y'all. We have Google. Google exists, and Google is a definite research tool. Or if you guys are using ChatGPT to help you get a list, no problem. The point is, you want a nice, lovely list to work with that can help you as you're doing your responses. Okay, so we've got that. We now know how we're going to direct our learning for vocabulary, and that's to assist us as we're doing past papers, as we're doing practice for the orals papers. Okay, then you also want to ensure you have a list of verbs. I wrote tenses here. I don't know why I did that, but you want to have a list of verbs. How I normally work with verbs for my learners is I do regular verbs. All right, all the popular AR, ER, IR, you can literally Google a list of those, because once you have your regular verbs, your top 100 regular verbs, it's very easy to work with them in any tense, right? Because again, they're regular. All right, so you need to have your list of regular verbs that you can work with, but you also need the irregular verbs. So there are some irregular verbs that are just, you can't live life without them. And normally in your textbook, they are all going to be identified either at the front or the back of the textbook. I don't have any. Do I have my textbooks next to me? Because I am coming on these lives without my textbooks. Because I absolutely love the Collins textbook, and I love School Spanish Course, which is pretty old. But if you have School Spanish Course, at the back of that book has a list of the regular verbs to use. It's absolutely gorgeous, laid out with all the tenses. You just obviously want to ignore vosotros, because we don't do vosotros too much on this side of the world. But again, you want to do your core irregular: tener, ser, estar, querer, haber, hacer, ver, ¿qué más? But those are like your core ones. You have those, and then you know how to deal with them in certain tenses. And yes, this is the only grammar point I'm probably going to give you for this. You do have to be comfortable with some tenses for the orals exam. Definitely present simple tense. Maybe not so much present continuous, more present simple. You also need to be very comfortable with the difference between present and imperfect. It's a marked difference in Espanol. And I just recommend, for a little flair and confidence, and because it comes in handy sometimes, future and conditional. Future and conditional are actually very, 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 very easy to learn, because the endings are very, 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 very simple, even in irregular form. All right, so that's my one grammar point, and I'm not doing more grammar. And maybe you're wondering, why am I not going to talk about more grammar for orals? It's not because you don't need grammar. That's not it. It's that grammar is very heavy. And if I tell you to go learn a bunch of grammar right now, you may be more discouraged than encouraged for the exam. So I don't want you to just learn grammar and lose your confidence. All right, it's better that you actually attempt the questions and then go to your grammar textbook as a reference or a guide, and that is going to help you a lot for this exam. All right, and my last slash vocab slash grammar point, I said there's just one more point, I'm so sorry. Commands. You will need commands for oral situations. Oral situations definitely is going to have a command. Just get comfortable with commands. You want to know the familiar affirmative and the familiar negative. Try that first, okay? Get comfortable with familiar affirmative and negative. I normally would have taught my learners, I would tell them to learn no te preocupes, don't worry, because that's somehow a phrase that would come up like for oral situations. So, for example, your friend did not do well in exam. What do you do to sympathize? Or what do you do to console them? No te preocupes. Muy sencillo. Muy sencillo. Muy sencillo means very simple. Bueno. All right. So that's my last bit of advice in terms of vocab slash grammar. Okay, and you would be okay for exams. Now, you already should know by now that the exam comes in 3 sections. All right, so let's talk about reading. Now, reading is the one section that I think a lot of people can do really well with really early, and nothing happens for reading. I've had students say, "Oh, I can't find the reading passages because I don't have paper trees, so I can't practice reading." That is an inaccuracy. You can use any bit of any kind of passage that's written in Espanol or French or Portuguese, all right, because all of these languages apply. You can use any passage. So what I normally use is the reading comprehension passages in paper 2. Those are very good alternatives to the orals passage. The reason I say you can use that, one, they're a bit longer. They're a tad bit longer, so it's better practice. Two, it also has a similar level or range of vocabulary. All right. So because it has that similar level or range of vocabulary, it's actually a lot easier for you to transition to what they would bring in the actual orals paper. Please don't think that you need to get an orals paper to pass reading for Spanish. That would be a grave misconception. I have, for fun with previous learners, as we did orals prep, I have actually given them my university level poetry to read, Spanish poetry. And we just had fun. We read, oh my gosh, what's that guy's name? I forgot. I didn't give them Borges. I forgot his name. He has so many lovely romantic poetry. But we would do that for fun because the point is you want to practice reading a lot. And this is my other big point with reading. If you find your passage, so this is your paper, right? You're gonna pretend this is your paper for reading, and you're just like, that's not gonna help you for the exam. You actually need to read in Spanish. I'm trying to find something that's written in Spanish right now to read because I'm telling you this point. So like if you actually have, give me a second, let me see. What's something? Okay, let me pick up a reading passage. My goodness, not this one. Okay, I'll use this because this is actually a book in Espanol. Yes, I have books in Spanish because if anyone here wants to actually do Spanish at Cape, I'll let you all know. If anyone here, because it was a shock to me when I chose Spanish for Cape, but no, Cape, not Cape, I did GC. But if you're going to further any of your foreign languages, you will have to do literature in the language. Yes, I said literature, actual literature. And it's much more, ¿qué la palabra? Literature in these languages is a lot different from the literature English students do that they are so traumatized by. Please, if I could have done Shakespeare, but for Spanish, it would be very, very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. And now I love the Spanish literature I did. I know I'm digressing, but I love the Spanish literature I did, but wow. Okay, but anyway, so let me go back to my demonstration again. So this is how you don't want to do it all in your head. You don't want to just be looking at the paper. What you want to do is actually read. So I have pase por el parque. Pedrito, un niño travieso de 7 años, decide tomar un paseo en el parque. A su lado camina su perro llamado Fido. Fido es de pelo largo, color blanco y tiene las orejas marrones. mueve su cola con emoción mientras ambos transitan por un camino entre filas de árboles. Oye, muy bien. Oh, like that was it's been a while since I spoke in español and read in español. So you want to do it like that. And you may or may not have noticed that I actually hesitated, and I hesitated because I had to correct myself. I said mientras instead of mientras. So that's actually something really good for you to know, because in the exam, if it is you stumble over a word but you immediately correct it for reading, they do not penalize you. It's okay, all right? I want you to know it's okay. It's okay. So you've got to practice out loud. And in terms of practicing out loud, now you could do it by yourself, but remember in the exam you're going to do it with a total stranger. I'm not trying to scare you, but you are going to do it with a total stranger. So what I normally ask my learners to do is when they're practicing, you got your little lección con Pedrito, and you're practicing, what I want you to do is uh, practice with a trusted friend. If you've got a really good, serious, key adjective, serious friend group, repeating that word, serious friend group that's seriously trying to speak Spanish, what you can do is practice in front of each other. Practice your reading. Same applies to conversación, which is conversation. Same applies to oral situations. You practice in front of them. Now, if you don't want to practice in front of your friend because you're shy and you're concerned about how you sound when you're stumbling or things like that, what I've normally asked my learners to do when they do self-study is to, you will know yourself. You've got that stuffed toy that's still lining in your room. Sorry, I'm saying lining because that's actually weird. But you've still got your stuffed animal that's still hanging about in your room, on your bed, or you've got your action figurines up on the wall, all the anime posters, whoever it is in your room that's there, that's not actually going to talk back. Look at that poster, look at that figurine, look at that stuffed toy, and read to them. I'm telling you, it works like a charm. Everyone, I have all of my learners who have used that tactic, they said it helped when they were studying and when they were practicing. Because again, Espanol or Francés or Portuguese, they are subjects that you actually do have to do a lot of self-study for. So if for any reason there's anyone who's actually going to write in 2025 and 2026 and you are in the stream, watching the stream in 2024, please take note of these tips, because they will help make your life, they will help make your marks a lot easier. So good. So we've spoken about using the paper 2 reading comprehension as a substitute for your oral prep. We've spoken about reading aloud or to a friend or to your stuffed animal. All right. What I would also recommend is that you can Google passages as well. You want to look for passages that are A1 or A2 level. A1, A2 kind of means beginner. Those are codes for beginner. So if you Google that, or if you Google something as simple as like fairy tales, but I kind of don't like, you know what? Yes, I'm still going to recommend it. You can still read those, because the point is you need to practice. Another recommendation I would say is that before you practice I would really recommend that you practice your vowels. Vowels, listen, as someone who's, try to recap orals for students and go through the entire oral exam with my learners, vowels are where we make mistakes in Espanol. That's where we fall, right? Because the vowels in Spanish are so simple. English has more complicated vowels, right? So I know if you're doing French or Portuguese, I'm kind of being very specific. I'm not helping you here, but hopefully you may get some benefit from this, right? But for Spanish, when it comes to Spanish as an English speaker, Spanish has a smaller vowel range. Just work with me here, guys. I could explain the technical aspects. If you guys go into Cape Communication Studies and you meet me again, I'll explain it technically there. But English has a wider vowel range than Spanish. Spanish vowels are very pure for the most part. They stay very consistent in terms of pronunciation. So you have to work on just going ah, e, o, u, ah, e, o, u. It's going to help you a lot. It's not going to help you 100%. It's going to help you a good 90%. All right. So that way you don't go into the exam saying telefono instead of telefono. Or no. So you've got to remember the accents too. So I would recommend that. Another thing, if you can't handle this particular recommendation is only probably for students who are feeling fairly comfortable with Spanish. If you're not comfortable, I would not recommend it. But those of you who have WhatsApp and are using WhatsApp channels, I would recommend that you add WhatsApp channels. And this is something that those of you who speak French, who are doing French and Portuguese, can do as well. You go to the WhatsApp channel section and you go to the section where they ask you could follow more. And you will normally see a list of options and you'll see region. Just switch to a country that speaks the language that you want to focus on. And you're going to get a lot of channels for that country, especially for Spain, for France, probably for Portugal as well. You're going to get native language channels. Everything is done in French or Portuguese or Spanish. But again, and so this is to help you with reading as well. But again, only if I'm only recommending this to those of you who are already comfortable with the language. If you're not comfortable, I will not recommend it because it's going to be full. Okay, very good. Great. So let's move on to conversation. So I don't have my mark scheme up, but I think reading is about 10 marks and conversation is a whole lot more than 10. So a lot of students tend to run away from conversation. Guys, do not run away from conversación. Conversación es tu amigo, tu amiga. It is your friend. You have to get comfortable with it because you have to do it and get your marks. Listen, I want you guys to get your marks, right? So what you need to do is actually practice the conversation with your friend group. All right, you could practice a conversation with your stuffed animal too, because conversation is not actually a conversation, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Give me a second. My goodness, right? Sorry about that. So what you want to do is make sure you get access to the questions. Now, I think a lot of textbooks that do focus on orals actually have very good substitute questions. Listen, I'm sure by now you would have gotten a list of questions on the exam. But here again is another section where your students trying to learn off the questions. All right, don't try to learn off the questions because that will throw you off the exam. What you want to do is understand what types of questions come based on the topics, because the questions come based on the topics, right? Now CXC is doing this crazy thing recently where it's coming based on the passage. I don't know why they decided that this was a good idea. However, if you get list of questions, there are certain questions that just come under particular topics. All right. If you're doing daily routine questions, they're going to ask you things like, ¿qué te gusta hacer por los fines de semana? ¿Qué te gusta hacer por los fines de semana? What do you like to do on weekends? Por los fines de semana me gusta pasar el tiempo con mi familia porque mi familia es la unidad más importante de mi vida, o el grupo más importante de mi vida, right? So that, what I just said, I hope you understood it. That's an idea of how you want to respond as well, okay? I want you guys to respond by answering the question and giving a brief reason or a brief explanation. Now, when you get questions that say explica, explain, or describe, describe, you are going to have to talk in español. ¿Me entienden? ¿Me entienden? I hope so, because that's the thing. You're going to have to talk in Spanish. So as you're practicing your questions, practice answering the question and giving a little more information. That is going to help your marks so much. It is. But I don't want you to learn off past questions. The topics keep coming back. Questions may come back, but questions may come back with alterations. And the only reason questions kind of come back is because the topics come back. All right. So, and again, because of this added dimension of que la palabra, that added dimension of basing questions off the reading, you have that factor to work with. You have to be really attentive. You've got to be have good listening skills. All right. So you just need to practice. You just need to practice in that one. I hope I help. Oh my goodness. Listen, I don't think you understand how. I'll wait to get to that, but for me, Spanish is. I feel for Spanish students. I feel for you guys even more than I feel for the Cape Com students. And I know you guys are not at Cape level. When you get to communication studies, you may remember what I said and you'll understand why I feel for those groups. But for Spanish, I understand how hard it is for you guys because most cases you guys are taught using the wrong methods. Grammar translation. Grammar translation is not the best way to teach a foreign language. Most of you guys don't speak Spanish because you haven't been and it's not that you haven't been encouraged, it's that sometimes there's no time or priority in terms of speaking Spanish, so it becomes really hard. But the real key to learning a foreign language is to speak it. All right, so you've got to speak it, and that's why conversation is supposed to be the most natural part of this exam. And I know it's a bit nerve-wracking, but better, por favor, don't try to learn off questions. Practice it. Practice your response. Practice your confidence as you respond. Practice being calm as you respond, and you will be quite fine. Then let's go to oral situations. I know a lot of people are upset that oral situations are back. I am not. I'll tell you why. Because I do believe CSEC did not explain how they did. I don't think there's an explanation on how they did the marking the last couple of years without reading and conversation. But I'm just saying, with oral situations back, you have more room to get more marks. That's just how I see it. So with oral situations, again, you do not want to learn off these situations. Situations may change, all right? Situations may change. We've not seen oral situations for the last couple of years. However, they always tend to fall within the same topics of home and family, school and career, daily routine, travel, shopping, sports and recreation. So they'll fall within those topics. Now, it's normally a tool part or response. But what you need to do is think of the response in context. Oral situations are just like situations in paper 2. They're very, very contextual. So this strategy I'm giving you here, this tactic is what I would normally recommend for my learners when we're looking at paper 2 situations as well. You want to think of it three-dimensionally. Think of it as a real life situation. All right, what would you do? It's your you passed an exam and you tell your mom that you got top marks. What does your mother say? Felicitaciones. Congratulations. What else is she going to say? So don't think of these. This is a section where you do not need a long response. Conversation, I mean, let's talk a little more. But for oral situations and even paper 2 situations, short and sweet. Breve y dulce. That's what we're aiming for. All right? So you want to think of the entire situation you've gotten with both lines. And you want to think, what is the one-line response? Think of it like a play or a movie. It's the one-line response you need to give to complete the situation. Don't add extra information that would make me want to ask a question. All right? And because the examiner can't ask a question. So you need to fully complete the situation and then perfecto. Muy perfecto. Bueno. All right. And what's my other thing? Okay. Don't overthink. Don't overthink. So I'm reiterating that. Don't overthink. And also don't overthink for conversation as well. They're often very, very simple. What it is that you've got to reach in yourself for the words and pull them out. Okay, so basically we gotta practice still, guys. We have to practice. And this last thing, I think a lot of people don't notice. I think it holds true based on feedback I've gotten from learners across the region. Instructors are really nice. Nobody wants you to fail your Spanish orals exam. Like, nobody wants you to feel it. We understand how nerve-wracking it is. Most of your Spanish teachers should at least have done a degree in Spanish. Listen, for my degree in Spanish, it's Spanish literature. I did plays in Spanish, poetry in Spanish, novels in Espanol, a whole novel in Espanol. We did Spanish conversation, we did Spanish presentations. My first entire year of undergraduate UE, all the lecturers lied to us and pretended they could not speak English to make us speak Spanish. So we understand how challenging is it. I was in final year university and there were people who chose Spanish who refused to speak. It doesn't help. It doesn't help. But what happens is that the teachers are very sympathetic to your cause, right? So they're not there to make the experience worse for you. They're really there to make it better. And some really, 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 really try their best to make it the best for you, okay? They really try. But of course, it's an exam, so they can't tell you, say this. So what happens is that you need to remember that they're really nice. They're more than likely going to care. And they will try to guide you to help you build good responses. Now, if for conversation you you you're hesitating, they will wait. They will wait for you, but of course you still need to complete your response, right? Another thing to be mindful about instructors, sorry, I'm saying instructors, invigilators, all right? They are also limited in the exam. All right, so for example, with conversation, it says conversation, but it's not really a conversation. I used to call it an interrogation with my learners, and then I thought, okay, maybe the word interrogation is a bit harsh. It's actually it's more of an interview, but not a nice, no, let me say not a nice interview. It's an interview with a lot of parameters. So they ask the question and you reply, right? And they can't ask you back a question based on your reply. Once you've replied, they have to move on to another question. So I want you to bear that in mind, because I want you to understand that you are the one who is going to have to give the full response still at the end of the day. It is up to you. I know that does not sound, for some of you, you're going to listen to this and say, yo, this did not help me at all. This didn't help me. But let me tell you something very realistically. If you haven't done any Spanish for the last 2 years, you have already not helped yourself. But you're at a moment where you can dig deep and make something happen, and you can start with the oral. And here's a really good plus to this. All the work you do with orals, this is an exam, language exams, these foreign language exams. The work you put in for orals, it helps you with paper 2 and it helps you with paper 1. It's not going to be in vain. There are some subjects where the paper 1 and the paper 2, or even the SBA, because this is an SBA replacement, are so different that you do totally different things. For English, if I have English students and I'm doing paper 3, we are having a totally different conversation for paper 2 people. And for you, those of you doing paper 2 English and you submitted an SBA, trust me, be glad you submitted that SBA. That paper 3 is dramatic, all right? So, but for Spanish or French or Portuguese, all the work you put in here is not in vain. It is going to benefit you for your paper 2, because the same topics, here paper 2 centered as well. The same vocabulary, paper 2. It's also going to apply to paper 1. All right. And if you don't know what a paper 1 looks like, you can check out the paper 1s on my channel. I have, I think 2019 I haven't done any after 20. 19. I don't know if I'll do any more. And let me apologize if some of them have bad audio. Some of them do have bad audio. It's because they are live recordings of Zoom calls taken during the pandemic. So I think I had someone say, "Oh my gosh, you didn't let me reply." It's because I was replying to the Zoom chat. The Zoom chat already had their responses because they were hip to it. They were already prepared. So yeah, I'm so sorry. But it's there as a guide because again, I know just like with orals, a lot of students don't get access to paper one. And that's the reason they're up still, because honestly I would have taken them down. Um but my students from 2020, they were like, no miss, leave it up because those things helped us a lot to survive the Spanish during the pandemic when they had to write. All right, so this is the end of my prep for orals. I think the only other thing I would say is, and this is what I would say in general for anyone, it's manage your time well. Don't do so much work for orals that you ignore everything else. Do it in breaks. There's only so much information your brain can take before it overloads and then you combust, metaphorically combust, and you can't take anything again in your brain. So don't do so much. I personally, when I do any kind of studies, it's a 2 hour segment. It's like 1 hour, 2 hours. So if you know, if you're doing oral prep and it's 1 hour, then do that. But primarily you want to be working with your actual past papers to help you prepare. All right. So, I wish I could do more for you babies. However, little lovely Spanish estudiantes, this is what I can recommend for this last minute dash. If you are here and you are on the stream and this is going to be you in 2025 or 2026, maybe 2027, if you're that ambitious, you want to be mindful of these things because a lot of what you actually do for a foreign language, it's daily stuff. You're not going to do the complicated stuff until you do pre-undergrad or undergrad work. Undergrad is university. At this level, it really is simple basic stuff. Grammar tends to be challenging. Pronunciation tends to be challenging. Why are those challenging? Because we don't have that set in our brain. Language is set in your brain, and that particular setting or programming is not within us, right? So you actually have a period of making your brain readjust. And the best way of making your brain readjust is some of the things you actually do for orals: practicing out loud, reading out loud. You go home and as you get home, say buenas tardes a todos. You just use your simple Spanish phrases and it will help you. When I was preparing for exams, Spanish was very hard for me. For CSEC, it was very hard to concentrate because I was not very sure about Spanish. We had issues during my 5 years in secondary school with foreign language teachers, and the teacher I had was very, very, very good, but we had a lot of last minute work to catch up on. And one of the things that actually helped me get better at Spanish is that, well, this is particular to me, is my dad gave me a very old, it's very old. It's so old, it's from the cassette era. That's how old it is. He gave me a very old book with some pronunciation for conversation. And I followed that. And then I read a book about Spain. And when I read those things, it made me feel like, oh, Spanish is not bad, because my heart was grieving for French. I was not able to do French, so I didn't really want to do Spanish. So you need to find something to motivate you as well. So this is where listening to some Spanish music or having a show play in Spanish dub kind of helps. I didn't go into that, so I'll probably go into that in another video. But whatever motivation you have to help you continue, I think it really, 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 really will help all of this seem simple. All right. So thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions about Spanish, it could be speaking it, learning it, getting better at grammar, getting better at vocabulario, paper two, paper 2. I'm supposed to have a video on paper 2 and explaining paper 2 coming up soon. Any questions you have, please feel free to comment below and let me know, and I will make a video about it. All right, as always, con amor y éxito. Ciao, ciao, ciao.